Welcome to the Bill Kelly Podcast, critical discussions in critical times. Here's your host, Bill Kelly.
And welcome to another edition of the Bill Kelly Podcast, critical discussions in these critical times. I'm your host, Bill Kelly. Over the last couple of programs, we've been talking about some of the pressure on the extreme right political groups, well, especially on our side of the border, of course, with the conservatives and Pierre Poilievre. I want to focus for a few minutes, though, on this particular program about what's happening down south. That's Donald Trump. That's the MAGA movement. The MAGA movement and Trump, of course, that's the mothership of all the, political dysfunction that's going on with the extreme right these days. But there seem to be some cracks happening with the Trumpers, too. And I'm not so sure, just me being skeptical, that it's going to make a whole lot of difference. But there are some indicators here that maybe more and more Americans are coming to the conclusion that maybe Trump is part of the problem here, not part of the solution. But if that's the case, and there seems to be evidence that was, then why did the opposition party down there, the Democrats, let Trump off the hook time and time again? The latest example, of course, was this past weekend with the shutdown that we've talked about. And I know it's complicated as to why it happens. And I think it's just plain stupid, by the way, that a government, I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, whatever, that the rules say that if you don't pass this funding bill, nobody gets paid. I mean, there are other democracies where they found a way around that, where the people that are working for the government don't have to suffer, but they haven't got that point yet with the states. So, as you know, government workers, air traffic controllers, members of the military, just about everybody who works in a government role hasn't been paid for a while because this shutdown, this problem that's going on right now in the Congress and in the Senate, for that matter. And it was causing huge problems. Well, the polling that was done just a couple of days ago indicated that more and more Americans were now looking at this and saying, you know what, it's Republicans' fault. It's Donald Trump. Even though Trump goes on television and on his social media site constantly and blames the Democrats. Mike Johnson, of course, says the same thing. It's all the Democrats' fault, which doesn't make any sense at all, by the way, quite frankly. The Republicans control the presidency, obviously. They control the Senate. They control the Congress. So how in God's name could the Democrats be responsible for it? But a lot of Americans were buying into that. Oh, those old Biden policies. Well, now I think the chickens are coming home to roost in this. But with all of that pressure and with the public opinion turning finally against the Republicans, why in heaven's name would the Democrats give in and simply say, okay, let's bring the House back? People are scratching their heads. And I know I've seen Democratic leaders, and I'm sure you have over the last couple of days, going out there and say, oh, no, we're going to win this thing. We did this, but we got what we wanted. No, you didn't. The major linchpin in this whole debate was health care and the Affordable Care Act. Now, they call it Obamacare. I mean, that's a kind of a nickname for it. But the reality is, of course, finally got passed on the Obama administration. Trump has been trying to kill Obamacare ever since he walked down the escalator that first time many years ago and said he was going to run for the president. And he recently wants to kill Obamacare, so frankly, because he hates Barack Obama. The fact that it's his policy, that it's got nothing, he has no alternative. He's mentioned day one, I've got a better plan. He's never introduced anything in the way of a better plan. But the Republicans, of course, being sycophants to Trumpism, have always followed suit and say, well, if he wants to kill it, we're going to kill it. And millions of Americans are either going to lose their health care altogether or be faced with such ridiculously high premiums that they're not going to be able to afford it. That's the reality here. And the Democrats were right to stand up to that. And now they've given in. And their rationalization for it was, well, we've been promised that later before Christmas we'll get to vote on whether or not we're going to extend the benefits for that. Well, first of all, there's no guarantee that's going to happen. Second of all, there's no guarantee that they're going to win that vote. Third, there's no guarantee that Trump is going to pay attention to it. So, I got to wonder just what the reality here is and what they think they've won. And what I really am upset about, and I hope most Americans are, is that they're being played here. They're the pawns in this whole thing, and it's disgusting to watch because you see the end result of the impact of people that can't afford medications, don't want to go to the hospital because they're afraid of bills. It's a messy situation, and it's become worse, of course, in the last 9 months, 10 months since Donald Trump was taken office again. The one silver lining, I guess, in this black cloud is that it seems as if more and more Americans are starting to understand that, hey, maybe he is the problem. Maybe the higher prices, even higher than they were back in January, maybe that's because of some of the stuff, the tariff policies and some of the things that are going on here. So more to come on that one, certainly. And by the way, speaking of tariffs, I want to touch on that in just a couple of minutes. because that's going to have an impact on our economy here in the States and a lot of other economies right around the world, depending on a certain Supreme Court decision that should be coming down. And the latest on the Epstein files, too, which is the undercurrent of all the speculation and the conflict that's going on within the Trump administration. We all know the story, Jeffrey Epstein and the island and the allegations. And it's a disgusting story. But we know there's some evidence there. And we know that there was a report that was done. And we know that all through this past election last year, that the Republicans were saying, release the Epstein files, release them. We want all the names. There's a list of all the people that were clients, all these dirty old men, frankly, that were using and taking advantage and abusing these young girls. And Epstein, of course, was the ringleader. He was finally convicted of some. He apparently hung himself in prison, if you believe that story. Others suggested that it was a far more nefarious end that came. But that's the background on this. But, of course, now that Trump is back in power, they are reticent, shall we say, to release the Epstein files. Well, there are still investigations ongoing. And just today, just before we started recording the podcast, the House Democrats released emails in which Jeffrey Epstein wrote that President Trump had, quote, spent hours at my house with one of Mr. Epstein's victims, among other messages that suggested that the convicted sex offender believed that Mr. Trump knew more about the abuse than he has acknowledged. Now, we all know, of course, that Trump has emphatically denied any involvement or even any knowledge of what Epstein was doing with sex trafficking. We were friends once, but we dropped off, and that's all there is to it. But you've seen the pictures. You've seen the evidence. You know that there is documented proof now that Trump flew down to Epstein's private island many, many times. Again, Republicans just want to kind of slough that off and say, well, it's no big deal. So what? People hop onto planes all the time. So, they've always played defense when this comes along. And there are some people who just take Trump at his word. I can't understand why, but they still do after all that's going on. So will this newest revelation actually convince more people that that Trump is deeply involved in this? I mean, you've heard the speculative, because there is no official list been released. So, they're speculating that Trump is involved in that. Bill Clinton's name comes up. Prince Andrew, of course, has lost his title and lost a whole lot from the royal family because of his involvement with Epstein and the disgusting things that were going on in Epstein's island. But other names are really, at this point, best guesses. They may or may not be on the list because any evidence that's even released about the Epstein files, of course, names have always been redacted. Because they're afraid of ramifications. Howard Lutnick's name comes up. Apparently, he was the next-door neighbor of Epstein for a while, and they were very good friends. So who knows? But, the way to clear the air on this and to try to get the facts as opposed to the speculation is to release the files. But a lot of people would be hurt by that, including, we assume, Donald Trump. Now, I don't know, and I'm not a lawyer, but the reality here is there's very strong circumstantial evidence. I mean, you've seen pictures of Trump with young girls. We've seen pictures of Trump with Epstein. We've seen Trump getting friendly with young girls. And these are photographic elements that are out there. So does that necessarily mean he's guilty? Well, it kind of leans a lot of people in that direction, doesn't it? So the question I'm asking, and the question that I think a lot of people that have been following this file is, even if those files were released, and this is just based on what I've seen from past evidence, even if there's damning evidence that Trump was deeply involved in this and was in fact one of the perpetrators of these heinous acts, would it make a difference? I mean, I know it's wrong, and I know he should be punished for this. Absolutely, he should be punished for it. But Trump gets off the hook time and time again. And because there is an element of the MAGA crowd that just, first of all, don't believe anything that's said negatively about Trump, and B, are going to forgive him no matter what. I mean, we were shocked, and to go way back to his first political run when, the Access Hollywood tape, I grabbed girls by the what, and, they let me do this. That in just about anybody else's political career would be the death knell. That would have been it. Boom, right there, you're gone. Forget about it. Don't even run for public office. Don't even show your face around here. But instead, people forgot about it. They turned their back on it and say, yeah, so what? And I'm wondering if the same thing, no matter how damning the evidence it would be, is going to happen here. Would the MAGA people simply brush this off and say, yeah, well, that was then, this is now? I don't know. I'd be disgusted if that were to happen. But I'm not sure that even the release, even the information that's involved in the Epstein files, even if that came out, if it would have much of an impact, if any impact, on a large segment of Trump supporters. Now, it may on the rest of the population, and it should on the rest of the population. But will it have the impact in the right circles? In other words, is there a judge, is there an attorney, a district attorney that would have the backbone to actually pursue charges if there was evidence like this? I don't know. And the fact that the answer to that is maybe, maybe not, that should be scary to an awful lot of the American people, because I think it indicates just how tenuous the U.S. justice system has become because of the Trump influence in this with the people that he's put on there. So those are some of the things that Americans are worried about here. And the impact on Canada with Epstein may or may not be of any significance. I mean, there's a moral element to this that I think we need to pay attention to. In fact, we want to be watching very cautiously to see if, in fact, this evidence comes out, because there seems to be more and more evidence in just about every element of the Trump administration that it's about cover-up and it's about personal gain as opposed to governing the people. And, the people that have been abused, including these girls, these victims, some of whom have come forward and written books, needs to be addressed. And I know that in bygone days, not that long ago, that would have been a done deal. Sure, of course, we have to look after the victims, the terrible things that are being said here, and we have to explore that. There's a reticence, even within the Justice Department, because he controls the Justice Department. So we don't know where that's going to go. One other element that I want to bring to the podcast here, too, because I think this is going to have a direct impact on Canada in so many different ways. The U.S. Supreme Court is sitting right now, their fall session, of course. And there have been some interesting decisions and cases that have come before the court. One, by the way, which is not going to go before the court, which surprised an awful lot of people. The court has declined to hear arguments about the decision about legalizing same-sex marriage. There was a plea before the court to overthrow the bill that allowed for same-sex marriage in the United States. And there are a lot of people that think that with the right-wing leaning towards the Supreme Court these days, and especially with the Trump appointees, that was next, especially considering how they developed Roe versus Wade and tossed that out, that same-sex marriage was going to be next on the hit list. Well, apparently it's not going to happen, because they have simply said we're not even going to hear the case. So I guess that element of American life and American law is safe for now. But who knows what's going to happen over the next couple of days. The other story that they want to talk about, and that I think is so important because it does have not just international ramifications with Canada and the U.S., but I'm talking global, and that's tariffs. And we've talked about this in great detail over the last little while. Donald Trump arbitrarily imposing tariffs on Canada, on Mexico, on the European Union. I mean, the list is endless, and the list is quite frankly staggering. And the argument, of course, is that the Trump administration, and for that matter, the office of the president, should not be allowed and is not allowed under their Constitution to impose tariffs. That anything to do with trade, with tariffs, with penalties of any kind to do with trade between countries is within the purview of the Congress, not the president. And this goes back to what we've talked about, three separate but equal branches of government. The administrative, the legislative. The administrative, of course, is the White House. The legislative is the Congress, and the judiciary. Trump, of course, controls all three, but they are supposed to be, as we said, separate and impartial. Now, you're going to get partisanship, of course, with the administrative and the other ones, the legislative. But the judges are supposed to be. Justice is blind. I mean, all the stories, all the cliches. It seems to be it's been anything but blind, which is why a lot of people were surprised that the court even heard these arguments. But the hearings are done, by the way. And the reporting on this indicates that the justices, including some of the right-leaning justices, were very hard on some of the Trump lawyers, the White House lawyers, that were trying to justify this idea about tariffs. There was finally an admission during the testimony of one of the Trump lawyers that yes, indeed, yes, the American people are the ones who ultimately pay the tariffs because it filters all the way down to them, which is something that Trump, of course, has been denying right from day one. But they have not released their decision yet. And notwithstanding the fact that they may have asked some very pointed questions and may have made the Trump lawyers feel pretty uncomfortable, we don't know which way this is going to go. Now, Trump has already said that they can't possibly rule that what he was doing was illegal. He says, first of all, if that were to be the case, all likelihood they'd have to pay all those tariffs back to Canada, to all the other countries that they've been charging tariffs to. Well, they don't have the money. Trump has already said the money's gone. No, he's trying to build a ballroom. He's trying to send money to Venezuela. I mean, on and on and on. So they're just saying we can't pay that bill. Now, that shouldn't be a factor in how the court actually rules. If you're going to rob a bank and then say, "Oh, I can't afford to spend 20 years in jail," that's too bad, so sad. You do the crime, you do the time, and the same thing should apply here. So, but I don't know. With this Supreme Court in the states, you don't know just how they're going to rule on this. But a ruling that indicates that, yeah, he did overstep his bounds does open up the possibility of litigation from other countries and others. And we in Canada are very interested in this because we understand the impact that Trump's tariffs have had on our economy and just about every facet of it. And the same thing is going on in other countries, in the UK and the European Union, in Asia. And if all of a sudden a lot of these tariffs were deemed to be illegal, and as a result, it would certainly have an impact on the global economy, because every nation, not just Canada, every nation has been impacted by this because it started a tariff war. Tariffs, counter tariffs, between nations, between sections of the world. It's really thrown the global economy into a huge mess, and it started with Trump and this idiotic idea about imposing tariffs. So we're watching with great interest. Now, the court, of course, is going to break another couple of weeks, of course, and they're into their Christmas break, which I think is going to take them right through to the springtime. You'd like to think that there's going to be a ruling released shortly about this, and we're all watching to see just what's going to happen, because what this court says and how the government down in the States reacts to that court decision is going to have a major impact on us in this country and on our government. And as we've talked about, an awful lot of the policies that Prime Minister Carney has talked about to try to counteract what's going on here with the Trump administration and their tariffs would change dramatically for the good for Canada, if in fact that ruling comes down and is favorable to places like Canada and other jurisdictions. So we'll keep an eye on that and certainly be talking about that on the podcast. That's it for this edition of the podcast. Thanks as always for being with us. If you're on YouTube, great to have you with us. Please hit that notification bell and make sure that you pass this on so that we can share the information and share the dialogue with others, too. And thank you to everybody for subscribing. We really do appreciate your subscriptions to the podcast. It helps us to continue with the work that we're doing, the research, and bring you these stories and bring you these opinions and hopefully feed the beast here so we can have an educated discussion with facts, not fiction, about the challenges that we're facing these days. And we do appreciate that support that you're offering to us. Thanks to Madeline Kelly for the great work, as always, producing the program today. Until next time, I'm Bill Kelly. Stay in touch and stay informed. Bill Kelly Podcast brought to you by Wizen's Law, personal injury lawyers. Listen, you didn't choose to get injured, but you can choose the right lawyer. Wizen's Law, 905-522-1102 or wizenslaw.com.